So great to be here with Illinois Farm Bureau, and this is my first candidates forum of this cycle, and I thought no better place to be than with Illinois Ag. This is how I wanted to kick off my campaign for re-election. And I remember 6 years ago when I first showed up here, I saw Rich and I saw all the folks with the soybean growers and the corn growers, and I said, you don't know who I am. I represent a suburban district of Chicago, and I know they looked at me with skepticism like, what's this gal going to know about farming? I said, just let me through the door. Give me a shot and let me through the door. And if I win, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can for you. And they have been partners with me ever since. I call all the time and say, I don't understand this, I don't understand that, let's work together. And I think we've been able to do a lot for agriculture, especially here in Illinois. You know, agriculture is the cornerstone of our state's economy and the core of who we are as a state. For generations, our Illinois farmers and ranchers have helped feed and power our nation, and I'm working hard to ensure that you can continue to do so for generations to come. Paul was telling me that he just got the 5th generation new baby boy born just a couple of days ago, so 5th generation on this farm has joined us. Look, not everyone knows, but I've been interested in agriculture since long before I ran for Congress. Most folks know about my military background, but what you don't know is that I worked for the American Farmland Trust when I first moved to Illinois 30 years ago. And my job was to go out and convince farmers to just let us have just set aside a small parcel and try some no-till farming. Let's not disc that parcel over, and let's do some no-till farming there. And this was in the early 90s, when we were still having brownouts come fall, when we were still losing so much topsoil in this state. And that was really the beginning of my interest in agriculture. So when my husband, Brian, was based in Kewanee with the National Guard, where he was the executive officer, I got to witness firsthand the other side of agriculture, which is livestock. And so many of the boys in that company were hog farmers. And so I got to go out and listen to them and hear them, you know, the issues that they were facing as hog farmers. And now I've learned things such as the fact that, you know, when you're transporting livestock, artificial time constraints put on the driver really hurts livestock, because you can't just pull over and park livestock in a rest area and think that you're going to be able to, you know, get up the next day and all of your livestock can still be alive. So you got to make sure that when you come up with regulations, it's sensible. It is something that achieves the practical solution of what you're trying to do, but also, you know, still meet the intent of what you're trying to accomplish in terms of health and well-being and safety as well. So that I learned from Kewanee, and I got to witness the election of the hog queen more than once. So the talent competition was really interesting. When I came to you all 6 years ago at this very event and asked you to listen to me and then hopefully elect me to my first Senate term, I said that you could count on me to do 2 things: to push for economic policies that serves all of us, and to work on securing the resources you need to grow your businesses and bolster our local economy. And I'm really proud to say that I've kept that commitment. And I just want to share with you some of the efforts I've led as your senator to support Illinois farmers. Over the past 6 years, I've been an outspoken leader in the Senate for incentivizing and expanding the use of American-grown biofuel and biodiesel. Because when given the choice between supporting Illinois farmers or foreign oil producers, I'm going to choose Illinois farmers every single time. It's why we need year-round sale of E15. I pushed for it, and I'm glad that President Biden issued a temporary waiver on E15 for this summer, but that's not good enough. I'm going to keep working as hard as I can to make it permanent year-round E15. And by the way, permanent year-round E15 is a deficit reduction. So it's a cost savings. It's crazy that we're not doing it. I've consistently worked across the aisle with our Midwestern senators to introduce common sense bipartisan legislation to expand E15. These efforts not only help our farmers, but help bring down prices at the pump for working families, decrease carbon emissions, and reduce our reliance on foreign oil. This year, I helped introduce 2 bills. The Homefront Energy Independence Act. I did that with Senator Joni Ernst, who's my fellow partner here. She's also a retired lieutenant colonel, just like me, also Army, whoop. So we do the Army to Army, Army chick to Army chick conversations all the time. But this bill is going to make E15 available year-round and establish E15 biodiesel tax credit. That's the Homefront Energy Independence Act that we're working to get passed. And then the Next Generation Fuels Act. We talked about this last night. I was really proud that I co-introduced that with Senator Grassley to allow for the incentivized sale of fuels with higher octane levels like ethanol. And we can't support biofuels without ensuring that the RFS is strong. So I will always continue to oppose any efforts to lower the RVOs. This is critically important because you need that base demand that you know that you can plan for, that you can make the investments that you need in order to sustain production, and also so that you can actually know what's in front of you. And this yo-yoing back and forth, 15, 12, billion gallons, 15, 12, 11, this is wrong. The last time before the EPA issued the new RVOs, I had some very tough conversation, and I said, do not come back to me with anything less than a 15. And we were able to do that. I wish it were higher, but at least 15 fixes the problem from the previous administration and gets us to a good place. Not the best place we can be at, but a good place. I'm going to keep working on that as well. We also worked on getting rid of these small refinery waivers that allow major oil producers to skirt around the RFS. I'm really pleased that we were able to get that done as well. I've pushed back against both the Trump administration and the Biden administration when they've tried to lower ethanol requirements, because it doesn't matter to me if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I will always do whatever I can to ensure that we're upholding the promises made to farmers. Just a few weeks ago, Senate Democrats passed the most significant investment in biofuels since the RFS program was created with the Inflation Reduction Act. One of my top priorities when we were working on this bill was making sure energy incentives included biofuels, and I'm very proud to say that we got it done. And there's $500 million in there for biofuels. And it was part of the negotiation that was happening with the overall package, though, was at one point we were trying very hard to make sure that we lowered the deficit. With the spending that's in that bill, we wanted to do the spending, but in a way that wouldn't increase the deficit. And we wanted to reduce the deficit by $500 million. And I had to stand here and I said, do not touch biofuels over my dead body. If you touch biofuels, I will not vote for this. And so we were able to protect the $500 million for biofuels. They found it from somewhere else, but we were able to put that in there. And that is going to be significant in growing biofuel production in this country. I'm very proud that we were able to get that done. And Senator Klobuchar in Minnesota and Senator Debbie Stabenow in Michigan were my two partners on that. The new law, this $500 million, is going to provide significant support for infrastructure improvements, for blending, storing, supplying, and distributing biofuels. It establishes a sustainable aviation fuel tax credit, and it extends tax credits for biofuels as well. But this isn't just a win for us here at home. Strengthening biofuels is a matter of national security. Some of you may have seen me in the last couple of days. I feel very strongly that strengthening biofuel, strengthening ag, is a matter of national security. And sometimes, when I talk about my interest in renewable fuels, folks ask me how I became so interested in America's energy sector. And I tell them that it starts with my experience nearly 2 decades ago in Iraq. That was a war fought, in part, over foreign oil. American boys and girls bled and died because our nation said this was important, and they went, and I went willingly. But the fact is, we shouldn't be fighting over foreign oil. We shouldn't be having to be cozying up to countries like Saudi Arabia with their human rights violations just because they control oil. I don't want us to become a nation like that exists in a place like Eastern Europe does, forever beholden to Putin. We can't be that. And a strong ag sector that can feed America, a strong ag sector that can grow and fuel America with biofuels is critically important to our independence and our ability to lead the free world. Also in Iraq, one of the things that happened was that 50% of all the casualties in Iraq occurred not when you were kicking down doors trying to kill the bad guys. 50% of the casualties in Iraq occurred during convoy operations, and 80% of the convoys were conducted to transport diesel fuel. Think about that. How many troops we could have saved had we had more biofuel generating capability, had we been able to provide the biofuels ourselves and not have to rely so much on diesel fuel. My work in the Senate hasn't just focused on biofuels. I've also worked on partnerships internationally, on trade, because I do sit on the Commerce Committee, and I want to make sure to represent our commodities and other products overseas. Earlier this year, I went to Taiwan and South Korea to highlight how Illinois is uniquely positioned to increase partnerships as a hub of agriculture, manufacturing, technology, energy. Our state is poised for greater investments to increase exports with international partners. I was proud to give Illinois a voice internationally, and I'm going to keep pushing for these efforts as well. And we've already seen how my advocacy will help bring investments to Illinois, because after I met with LG twice this past year, they just announced a partnership with ADM Indicator for the U.S. production of plant-based solutions like bioplastics. And that plant-based solutions for bioplastic is what's going to take ethanol from being so already fuel efficient. It's going to bring it to a carbon negative status. If we can really refine carbon capture and sequestration, put the excess carbon into the ground, and underneath us right now in this great state of Illinois is a limestone layer topped by a bedrock layer that would keep the carbon underneath. We can actually, in this state, produce net carbon negative fuel, and it's going to come from ethanol. And that is really critical. And that the creation of plastics will bring that even more negative. And that is an advantage for us. You know, as I've been serving for the last 6 years, there's been a lot that we've been working on, but I got to tell you, I'm so proud of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that we helped pass this past year. And it was bipartisan. Roy Blunt of Missouri worked with us and voted for it as well. There are so many provisions in there that I worked on that will include our inland waterways, and really all of the money that was put into the improvements of the locks and dams on the Mississippi. I am really, really proud of the work that we did to really elevate NESP to a higher level within the priorities of this nation. For too long, we've been waiting for too long to get this project off the ground. In these last 6 years, I've been able to become the chair of the Air-Land Subcommittee, which means I'm now in charge of the Army and the Air Force, which means Army Corps of Engineers answers my phone calls when I call them. So we were able to elevate NESP, the work that we're doing also with Lock 25. All of that is critically important. And this isn't just a theoretical thing. My staff's going to pass around something for you to see. But back in the 90s, I actually floated the first major movement of military equipment down the Mississippi by barge since the Civil War. So I understood how important and critical barges were, and I also how challenging our lock and dam situation is in this country. It's firsthand experience. We're going to send around pictures. I know it's bad when you look at pictures of yourself in your 20s and you're like, wow, that's like ancient. Like that was me at my fighting weight. Oh, crap. But, you know, as we look forward to 2023, we're all thinking about the next farm bill. I made sure to have input from Illinois farmers, and I cannot say enough about the Farm Bureau, the corn growers, the soybean guys. They have always been there. Rich, your team, you know, I can pick up the phone and call you anytime and then say, hey, you know, tell me what the difference of an RVO at 12.5 and 15 is going to do to you. Talk to me about crop insurance, because I want to support it, but I'm hearing from, you know, the libertarians and some of these other folks who are, you know, way out there saying that it's a handout. Talk to me. And to have that institutional knowledge, that partnership going forward has been so critically important. And just know that I'm going to be there. My priorities for the next farm bill for you includes protecting and improving farm safety net programs like the commodity support programs, the federal crop insurance that I've already mentioned, disaster assistance programs, as well as supporting export market developments like the Foreign Market Development Program and the MAP, the Market Access Program. Those are all critically important, and that's where we're going to grow and influence as a nation. As we're trying to compete with China and these other nations, this is where we can grow in strength, because we have the advantage with this great nation and the fertile lands and our farmers. Nobody has what we have here in America. This is a critical advantage. Just as important as our nuclear submarines, as our F-35 fighters, is you guys. And this is how we're going to dominate the world and be the leaders of the free world, both in terms of the military, but also in terms of the economy and making sure that we live in a world that truly supports free market, that supports hardworking families who are doing everything that they can to just live that American dream. So I'm eager to hear from you today. I have like 2 more pages I'm going to stop reading. because I'm tired of hearing myself talk as well. And I would love to answer any questions you may have for me.
The question here is, how do we build off of the successes of new federal dollars for a new 1,200 lock and dam system on the upper Mississippi? How can we continue to work on that and get dollars appropriated for improvements for everyone?
Well, I'm going to keep working on it. If I get reelected, this is one of my priorities. It's one of the reasons why when I joined the Senate, I joined the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, because that's where the money for infrastructure was coming from. And then I chose on the environment to be on the Environment and Public Works Committee, specifically because I wanted to be in charge of the Fisheries, Wildlife, and Waters portion. And that I'm chairwoman of that subcommittee as well. So I'm sort of trying to come at this problem from all angles, not just from ag. You know, being on ag committee, you can work on the farm bill, but this allows me to work on all the infrastructure projects. And I'm really proud that because I can pressure the Army Corps of Engineers, because I can push from Transportation Committee, because I can push from Public Works Committee, the Corps of Engineers just announced $1.3 billion in investments for 2020, starting in 2022. Of that, about 723 million is for lock and dam 25 and 1,200 foot lock, and then also overall, it's looking at the nest. All that money is dedicated towards nest, and I'm going to keep putting pressure on it. You gotta be the squeaky wheel, and you gotta be like pounding on tables and saying this isn't going to happen. You're not going to get my support over here unless you get this done. And for far too long, the upper Mississippi has been neglected. You know, folks put a lot of money into the lower Mississippi, and they have their lower Mississippi association, you know, group, and that's something we don't have in the upper Mississippi, which puts us at a disadvantage. But the argument that I've been making is, look, folks in Georgia, in the Carolinas, are buying their grain, their corn and soybean in particular, from Brazil, because you can get produce and get commodities from Brazil to the southeastern United States faster than you can float it down the Mississippi, because our locks and dams are in such disrepair. We got to fix this so that we actually can get our goods to market. And as you said, the carpenters were there. I even had trains and barge operators come forward and say, we'll put money in towards this because it's important to us. And I think we've raised the alarm. I think we've gotten everybody's attention. We've got this $1.3 billion towards the project, but it's going to need more, and I'm dedicated to getting more and fighting more and seeing this until it's done.
Thank you very much for those comments. Another question. Yesterday you were in Leroy talking about ethanol and blenders, gallons, and all that. I have two questions here. There's a lot of nervousness about the future of liquid fuels. And you made comments about how you intend to work toward carving out a piece of that for the future, a place for that in the future. There's federal $1 per gallon blenders credit for biodiesel, was extended for 2 years, but transitions away, putting the biodiesel industry at risk. Do you support a long-term extension of the blenders credit going forward?
I do support a long-term extension of the blenders credit. I think it's critical. You got to be able to plan out, right? You got to be able to make your capital investments, and you got to know that, you know, some of these credits are going to be there long-term. And it can't just be, you know, we're going to renew it every 2 years, or we're going to renew it in 5 years. It's got to be a long-term extension, and I absolutely support it. You should know that even as we make investments in electric vehicles and batteries and all that, that biofuels are critically important to a carbon neutral future, not just for this country, but on a global scale. Even if we transition away from combustion engines for vehicles in this country, other nations are still burning coal. They're still burning. They still have regular vehicles, and I want us to be in a position where they're buying their ethanol and their biofuels from the United States. That we're the #1 exporters of biofuels to the rest of the world. That market is going to be there for many, many decades to come. Additionally, we have to grow we're going to grow other markets for biofuels in this country in places where electric batteries are just not going to work, and aviation is the way to go. We have to be able to ramp up and get to a point where we can produce the aviation biofuels that the aviation industry needs at the quantities that they need. Secretary Vilsack, the Secretary of Agriculture, was just out here yesterday, and he made a very good point. He said, it's great if you have an electric car, and when you exceed your range, you just roll to the side and charge up. But if you've got an electric airplane, and it runs out of battery, and you don't have some sort of fuel in the gas tank, you're not staying up in the sky very long. And so you want to have that fuel that's there as well. And it's why, in addition to supporting the fuel incentives and tax incentive within the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, on my own, I put in a pilot program to develop aviation fuel within the Department of Defense in the defense budget. This is how I continue to work, is not just looking at just ag and one thing, but coming at it from lots of different angles to grow the demand, to grow the continued demand, not just short-term demand for a pilot, but continued demand, and demonstrate how powerful biofuels are for a green energy future. And I don't think we get there to a carbon neutral future without ethanol or biodiesel.
Thank you, Senator. Shifting gears a bit, it's really important to each of us here, the different commodity groups. Trade impacts our lives each and every day, and particularly when we're putting together our marketing plans to have some sense of security. And as we've visited with, all the commodity groups have visited with the administration on trade, yes. What can you do, or what have you done to encourage the administration to get more aggressive on trade deals and to get something a bit more solid? We've heard a lot about China, but is a large importer of our bulk commodities, particularly corn and soybeans in particular, soybean meal. But if we lose that market, what are our alternatives and our opportunities after that? Please give us some thoughts about how to encourage the administration to be a bit more, not a bit more, a lot more aggressive on trade.
Yeah, we have to be a lot more aggressive on trade, and I am certainly supportive of looking at reversing some of the previous administration's really negative action when it comes to tariffs on trades. I will tell you that our commodities are wanted and in demand around the world, and even in China. We have to trade with China. China is our greatest near-peer competitor. They want to be the leader of the world order, but their future world order is an authoritarian one. It's not a democratic one. It's not a free one. Everybody does everything the way China, the PRC, wants you to do it, or you get cut off. I'll give you an example. Taiwan was trying to buy the COVID vaccine from American companies, and the PRC, in the middle of a global pandemic, went and told all the countries that were making vaccines, AstraZeneca or the Indians and different folks, if you sell your vaccines to Taiwan, we will not do trade with you. And so Taiwan was basically blockaded off from the vaccine, which is why I went to President Biden. I said, we got to send some vaccines to Taiwan just to show them we support them. And so I flew in a giant aircraft, created a whole uproar. The Chinese launched like 17 sorties in the Taiwan Straits. It was me and Dan Sullivan, the senator. He's a Marine. I get in a lot of trouble partnering with Marines, I got to tell you. He's a Marine colonel right now from Alaska, and he and I flew in this giant aircraft to deliver vaccine to Taiwan to break that blockade. But this is the kind of thing that China does. We have to trade with them, and it is important because they're a major market for us. And by the way, their people want our products. They don't trust the commodities that are locally grown. They don't trust the food, the quality of the food that are locally grown. And I've traveled to Vietnam and other places that buy DDGs from other places, and they're like, the feed we get half the time is fortified with antifreeze to make it look like it's got a higher protein level. And they don't want to buy, consumers there want to buy American-grown foodstuffs because they know of the quality. So we have to be more aggressive. We've got to push them. We have to trade with them. But we also, I think, have to really be aggressive all around the world as well. And I'm glad that we're finally getting some trade representatives, nominated, and I've already called the administration and asked to meet with the two new nominees, both in the Department of Commerce and in the U.S. Trade Rep Policy Office, who are going to be dealing in particular with ag policy. And I'm going to keep a close eye on this, and I know the Trade Rep really well too. So,
thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.